The Authors Forum exists to inspire success. We will talk with authors and others in the publishing industry to bring you essentials and advice. Dr. Veronica Esagui is your host for Authors Forum.
Welcome to the Authors Forum. I'm your host, Dr. Veronica Esagui, and my guest today is Mark Shaff, author of the fast-moving thriller, Redemption Road. Mark, welcome to the Authors Forum.
Veronica, thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And so you have a wife and two sons, just like Marcus, the protagonist of your book, Redemption Road. Are you Marcus Diablo?
I would say in a way, yeah. I would say that when I wrote the book, it was sort of my alter ego. And I wrote the book originally first person. And so in that sense, I was actually Marcus Diablo. And the fact that the protagonist has a wife and two sons was part of what I knew. So it gave me a good starting point for the focus of the book. The focus is this family, and the family gets caught up into this terrible situation.
So as you were writing, was your family aware of what you were writing, or you kind of kept it hidden in a drawer until everything was ready to be out there?
We periodically would talk about what I was doing. I have an office in my home, but my sons had sort of occupied that for school. And so I wrote this book at my dining room table. So I was spread across it. I had books, I had stacks of manuscript, I had my laptop. I would plug my iPod in, and I would sort of close out the world around me, and I would just write. So I think they thought I'd gone around the bend a little bit.
What kind of music did you listen to while you were writing?
I listened to anything that my kids loaded onto it.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
it just sort of became like white noise. I don't even really recall listening to the music at all. It just sort of blocked everything else out.
Yeah.
We have a busy household. The kids are running in and out. We have a dog. So things were just very kind of crazy. And so I just would close the world out, and I would sit at the dining room table and write.
What drove you to write a thriller?
Well, I had always had this idea that I could write a book. I think like a lot of people. I thought, I read a lot, and I'll put down a book, and I'll say, I can write that. And in 2008, when the economy sort of went south and my business sort of really slowed down, I found that I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I started with this idea that I would write a book. And then I came up with this idea for this particular plot of the book. I had overheard a conversation. We were at a barbecue, and it was a summer. It was very hot. There was a lot of fires in the West. Millions of acres were on fire in Nevada, Northern California, throughout the Intermountain West. And I was listening to this conversation. I just sort of overheard this man say, they were talking about the fires and how terrible they were, and this man said, "It's terrorists." And this light bulb went off in my head, and I said, that is a great idea for a book. And so that's where it started.
And it's perfect. The timing is very, very good about the terrorism. I have to say that. When did you discover your passion for writing?
I have written for years, back to when I was in high school. Writing short stuff, short stories. I always remember writing these sort of very sentimental letters to, I have lots of nieces and nephews, so when they would graduate high school, I would write these, sort of everything a young person needs to know in 3 pages. And so I would write these letters to them, and this was the first time in their lives when they were old enough for me to have this sort of direct contact with them that was totally private, not part of their parents. So I've always written like that. I think in terms of my qualifications as a writer, my best qualification is I'm a voracious reader. And I read and read and read. And I'll read stuff every day, and I'll set it down, and I'll go, I can write that. And these are books, these are bestsellers sometimes. And I just have always thought about it, but I've never, like many people, I just never pursued it. I would say that I could do it, but I never actually did. And what I found about the writing is when I started, I had a complete novel in 20 pages. And it was done. There was the beginning, the middle, the end. It was fantastic. But it was only 20 pages long. And I realized that that wasn't going to cut it. So I opted to the other side. So I just immersed myself in the minutia of the story. And I wrote in great detail. And if it came to my mind, I wrote it. I didn't worry about how it flowed or anything like that. I just put it down on the paper, and I would write like that for as many days as I could ride that particular focus. And then I'd sort of get anxiety, and I'd get a little anxious, and I'd go back and I'd start sorting through it, cutting it into chapters, sort of editing it, you know. But self-editing, for me, is just a waste of time.
What kind of work did you do? Did that have any influence in your writing?
Not a lot.
No?
Not a lot to do with my writing, but some. I got to travel throughout a lot of Europe with a project that I had for many years. I was bringing back reclaimed materials, building materials from Western Europe, limestone, terracotta, wood products, old oak beams, oak flooring, those kinds of things. I was bringing them back and selling them to the high-end U.S. market. So it gave me an opportunity to see lots of Western Europe, to sort of see some of the older parts of that part of the country. So it gave me some perspective of other places. And so when I was writing, even picking characters, I brought characters from Ireland, and I created characters that came from parts of Western Europe.
From the people that you met?
From people that I met.
People you met.
And sort of a copulation of people that I met. I would sort of mash them together. I sort of attribute, it's sort of like, it's analogous to, you know, the kids today, they do the remix, right? So they take songs from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, then the 2000s, and they mash them all together. Well, that's what I did with my characters. I just cherry-picked personality traits and little idiosyncrasies from people, and I just mashed them into one character.
I love it. I love it. That's what everybody should do when they travel.
Yeah, it's
Get ideas
great.
for writing if they want to write about it. Because one of the things I loved about Redemption Road was the way you literally put the reader into the page by surrounding them with all the effects that were around you. Well, the main character, Marcus Diablo. So that was wonderful, and I love that. And I think anyone that loves a fast-moving thriller should definitely read Redemption Road. Your book should be considered fiction, but it is based on some facts.
It's based on some facts in the sense that there are places in the book that really exist. There's places that I've been, that I've visited, actual locations that I've been to. I changed the names, so all the names are fictitious. Although there are places like Yosemite National Park, wilderness areas. Those are all actual places. I use the names. The facts are, if I state facts in there about the size of a national park or the number of visitors to a national park, those are all true facts.
So you wrote about the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, see if I'm spelling all these right, Al-Shabaab, and every other radical fundamentalistic Islamic group. How much research did you have to do to write Redemption Road on those subjects?
I had to do a fair bit of research. One of the great things about writing today, so since the advent of the internet, is that you can research in real time.
So you don't have to go there.
Right, you don't necessarily have to go somewhere.
But you are.
Yeah, but you can find out, and you can research a place, you can research a location, and so you can research it factually, so you can find out where it is geographically, you can find out the population, you can find out the demographics, the climate, the economy. You can find out all that stuff, but what you can really find is you can find first-hand accounts, people who have been to these places who are relaying information that's not factual. They're relaying information that's how the people are, how the people act, what the area smells like. So you can get tactile information that will give you the opportunity to create a scene in a place that you possibly haven't been.
So you mentioned Australia. You've never been to Australia?
Yes, I have been to Australia.
So did you meet grandfather there? One of the characters in the book.
I did not.
No?
But I have a brother that lived in Australia for 12 years.
Okay.
And so my wife and I, before our boys were born, visited twice and were there for almost a month each time. And so we had the opportunity to see parts of Australia and to sort of get exposed to some of the traditional history of Australia. And the Aboriginal history is a big, big part of Australian history. It's a history that's very similar to the American Indian in the United States. I mean, these were a people that were displaced, that died by the thousands because of the diseases that the white men brought. And they not only saw their land taken, but they saw the livestock, the wildlife just decimated by the white man. So
yeah, I just love your description of grandfather. Can you just a little summary about what was that experience you had with grandfather, even if you didn't, but you may have had?
Yeah, I had this notion that the Marcus character in the book, he had to have an event in the book that happened that introduced some kind of, I'm going to use this term called fantasticism. It's not a word, but it has to be a little bit fantastical. It has to be something that seems a little bit on the edge of not being possible, but in your mind you think that could happen.
Paranormal, kind of like.
A little paranormal, a little bit from beyond this world. And I had used some of that in the development of the relationship with the Annie character, with not only her husband Marcus, but with her youngest son Garrett. And there is a paranormal element to that. But I wanted to be able to develop these skills in the Marcus character, and I had to figure out a way to do that. The Marcus character in this book he doesn't have very many skills. He has the drive and the will, and he has the physical fitness to do some of these things. But in terms of the actual skills to pursue these people who have committed this heinous crime on the United States and who have taken his wife away, he has to find a way to do that. And he's not going to be able to succeed unless there's some powers from beyond the sort of normal everyday realm to help him out.
Yeah, because he almost becomes like a Superman. You can't stop admiring him. I mean, I was like, whoa, if I was with Marcus Diablo, I would be safe.
And we had some conversation in the book. One of the first things that the editor said to me was, we're going to need to change the name of the character, the main character.
Oh, really?
But we'll get to that later. But I want you to think about it. It's something you're going to need to do. And the more I wrote the book, and the more we edited it, and the more we refined it, the more the name seemed to be appropriate. Because he's this man that is pretty flawed. And there is a little bit of devil in him, for sure.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yes, I love that. Were you in the military? Because you speak of in distance in miles and sometimes kilometers.
No, I wasn't in the military, but one of the things you find if you travel outside the United States is that everything is done in metric. Everything is done in kilometers. Everything is measured in liters. And so I have found that over time, I know this from my sons, they speak in both languages, both standard measurement that we use here in the United States and in meters, in the metric system as well. So it seemed like it was acceptable to write using both the standard measurement and using the metric measurement. Putting the note in there was something that the publisher wanted to do. So we put that note in just to kind of clarify.
Good. Well, there was something that you put in the book. You put the definition of a writer, and a lot of people that want to write should listen to this definition. It was anonymously written, correct?
It was anonymously written.
But it is perfectly written, and I think you are an example of a writer. And so would you read that to those out here and
I will.
Audience out there?
With our words, we paint tales, short and epic, of love and heartbreak, of happiness and despair, of triumph and tragedy, stories of this world and beyond, pictures of the past, the present, and the future. If we practice our craft well, we can for a time hold the reader's heart in our hand, feel its beat, and let our heart pulse in rhythm with theirs. And for those brief moments, we are one.
And that is a writer.